I've always loved helping people. I hated to see human suffering. And being that my grandmother and my aunts, they frequented the medical system, I got a glimpse into the disparity at a very early age, right? I saw how there were language barriers. I saw how, we were treated because, either they didn't speak the language or the nurses and doctors didn't look like them. And so having a knack for science, I decided fairly early on, this is my space. This is a space that I can make a difference, where I can not only alleviate human suffering, I can use my science background, but I could also be a bridge between, the haves and the have-nots, between the Haitians and the Americans, between the different intersections where I found myself, right? Because I was born in America, but I was raised in a Haitian culture.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Speak Life Podcast. It's your boy, Mark Mead. We're sowing seeds today for tomorrow's harvest, and boy, do we have a special treat for you today. When I talk about decorated, I got Dr. Rhoda Donat Flowers, who is just dynamic in a lot of different things. She's going to be an excellent interview, very educational and entertaining, but she's a board-certified family medicine doctor. I want to give her all her accolades, okay? Because she's got a lot of them. She's a very successful businesswoman and esteemed executive coach. She graduated from the School of Osteopathic Medicine at Rowan University, has a master's of public administration from Rutgers University. Dr. Flowers, you're kind of at the intersection of wellness and business, if we can describe that correctly.
That's right.
You have 2 decades of experience in medicine, business, coaching, consulting, and leadership. And you've had 2 successful exits of companies, of an urgent care practice and your personal family medical practice. And I think, every time I talk to you, every single time I walk away more polished, more educated, more, diverse, more challenged, I just feel better about myself, if I'm being very honest. And I feel like the last time we connected, it had been too long. It just had been too long.
Absolutely too long.
And so, I do remember, when COVID hit and we were talking and you were talking to me about the strands and the this, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm just getting educated. And so it is an honor. It's a super honor to have you here, have you on the podcast, and I'm so glad our audience gets to hear you speak about the things you're passionate about in the wellness and business world. So welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. It's interesting because you say that you walk away feeling better. Really, I see something inside of you, and I just kind of gently pull, right? And then just show you how amazing you are. So you're already amazing. You're already there. It's just a matter of just kind of turning the mirror a little bit so you can see you.
You're doing it already. We're just getting started. It's amazing to have you here. And again, I think people will understand what I'm saying in my intro as we go along this thing. And so if you could kind of start off with a little bit of a backdrop, where you're coming from, how did you get into medicine? Like, why was that your passion? And obviously the whole world opened up for you when you went down that path, not without challenge, but talk to us a little bit about your background and kind of where you're coming from.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. So I'm a second generation Haitian American. So my parents came from Haiti. As my father says, with a T-shirt on his back and $14 in his pocket, right? He came to the States, and the expectation of Caribbean parents, African parents, is that you make something of yourself. So my parents never forced us to do one thing or the other. They really just allowed us to see whatever God put in us, and we were allowed to pursue that, encouraged to pursue it. I've always loved helping people. I hated to see human suffering. And being that my grandmother and my aunts, they frequented the medical system, I got a glimpse into the disparity at a very early age, right? I saw how there were language barriers. I saw how, we were treated because, either they didn't speak the language or the nurses and doctors didn't look like them. And so having a knack for science, I decided fairly early on, this is my space. This is a space that I can make a difference, where I can not only alleviate human suffering, I can use my science background, but I could also be a bridge between, the haves and the have-nots, between the Haitians and the Americans, between the different intersections where I found myself, right? Because I was born in America, but I was raised in a Haitian culture. Always too American for the Haitians, always too Haitian for the Americans, right?
That's a unique way to put it.
Right.
Got it.
So I was always a bridge,
Okay.
right? Which served me well because I had to always, as we say, code switch, right? So I always had to figure out who I was at any given moment. And I had to figure out how to get this group to connect with that group, right? So that was my journey into medicine.
Yeah, and I love that, the bridge, but that bridge that you talk about inspired you. Like it ignited a fire in you from our last conversation, but also from what I know about you. And then you could tell by your passion, and so that bridge, I need you to discuss that, because that's not just a bridge. That is who you have become. So let's talk about this bridge and how you decided, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bridge the gap between worlds. And I'm going to make a mark in the world by bridging gaps. And so I want to know more about that. When you talk about that, what were some of the gaps throughout your career, or some of the bridges that you felt you needed to, the gaps you felt you needed to make a bridge around?
Interesting. So as you're talking, I remember vividly an encounter with an attending. So in medicine, we would go in, we would see our patients, and we'd come out and we present to our attending. So I remember saying to him, he's an older white gentleman, very, stereotypical, right?
Okay.
And I said, yeah, the patient has a blood sugar of, whatever it was. And, I carried on with the conversation. And he says, we don't say blood sugar, we say glucose.
Okay.
And I said, I understand that it's glucose, but the patient doesn't understand glucose. And so if I go into the patient and I say glucose, I can't educate them. They've disengaged, so I can't engage, I can't educate, and I can't empower, right? And so I used to get actually in trouble a lot when I used to try to bridge the medical jargon, right, to the layperson speak. Because at the end of the day, my patient, I am your teacher. I'm here to educate you on your process.
Right.
Because you have me for a good 7 minutes. Right?
Oh, God.
You have to go home with you and your disease process.
Right.
So I saw it as my responsibility to really teach them how to work with their blood sugar, not their glucose. It's too much for them to understand glucose. That took us, 4 years? I have maybe a good 4 minutes. You understand sugar? I'm coming down to sugar level.
Right.
I remember I trained in the South. Actually, I did 6 years out in Columbus, Georgia. And my first encounter with a patient with a boil, he just kept saying, I got a rising. A rising? I got a rising. I finished the entire encounter, and I go out to my nurse, and I said, her name was Ginger at the time. I said, Ginger, what's a rising? And she's like, it's a carbuncle. It's essentially a swelling on the skin that's filled with pus.
Got it.
A rising.
A rising.
A rising.
Amen.
So now I can't go into him and say, carbuncle, furuncle. A rising, because that's what he understands, right? So I do speak a few languages, and part of why I do that is, again, to be a bridge, right? Hola, ¿cómo está? Right? I may not be able to have a whole conversation, but you know that I have at least a brick that's moving closer to you, right? So that we can engage. Then I can educate. Then I can empower. So.
That's deep. And if you didn't just say what you just said, then I can educate, then I empower, I had a question for you.
Okay.
But you said what you said. You said, the bridge becomes the ability to educate and empower. And so that's it. Right? And so, because I was going to ask you, so the bridge, but everyone loves feeling like they're seen and heard, which is what you just said.
Yes.
You do a great job of making people feel seen and heard, is what you said to me at the beginning of this podcast. Right. And so if that is a technique and a skill, but somewhere along the lines you said, this is what I want to do. And it was based on, I'm assuming, educating and empowering.
So it's interesting the way you phrase the question, because I think who we are initially chooses us. And then we settle into, this is my path, I accept it. And then you find work, I accept it.
That's huge. Yeah. That's a huge moment in life.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you find the language for it.
Right.
Right? Because it took me time to figure out, why can't I fit? I can't quite fit in with, I can connect with both groups.
Right.
I can engage with both groups, right? I just can't quite like settle in and just be with this group or that group. Okay, so I'm a bridge because, they're beefing with them, but, that was just a misunderstanding, right? So the ability to really get people to connect became a skill. So, what is that, right? Oh, I'm a bridge. I'm not a connector in the sense of, well, my brother. Yeah. He's a connector.
Oh, boy, right? Is that man a connector.
Right.
Woo!
Yes, he is. So I'm not but I'm a bridge, right? So it takes some time to find language to who you're called to be, right? Once you accept the calling.
Got it.
But yeah.
And so do you feel like you have that language now?
I'm developing it slowly but surely. Absolutely. Because, as your journey progresses, you learn more and more about not just who you are, right? But how who you were and who you've become will serve who you're called to be, right?
Huge. And so when you said science is my door, was that automatically medicine for you?
Yes.
Why?
Why? That's a good question. I've never been asked that. There are two things I enjoyed doing growing up, teaching and medicine, right? So teaching, I saw fitting into medicine. Outside of teaching or doing medicine, I really didn't see what else I could do, right? It's kind of like I had blinders on, which, again, I think goes back to the thing that we're called to do, right? I could not see anything else.
And so, Matt, did you always have an entrepreneurial gene as well? Or did you develop that?
I think I've always had it. Okay. I remember growing up, again, my parents are Caribbean, right? We lived in Brooklyn to start, and so we would always walk by the bodegas. We would walk by, the different shops. I remember my father going house shopping and looking at real estate and different things. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool, right? From the perspective of, this is what makes the world go round. This is what makes the world work, right? I get to go and I get to pick food off of a shelf and I get to pay somebody. That's really cool. How can I do that, right? But as a little girl, you have to take a back seat. Let the men do all the talking, right? Let the men do the business. So it always fascinated me and intrigued me, but it seemed inaccessible to me until I got older, right? So, yeah.
We're building a very fascinating story here.
Tell me.
I want more. And so, when did you realize that the medical world and the business world could connect? Because you can write, and you might have already, a complete dissertation, definitely a novel, a book on business and medicine, and it would be fascinating because of your perspective. Well, because now that I'm learning, because you help people understand things in simpler language. Right. And so when did you see those two worlds colliding for you?
Interesting. I think fairly early on. So after I graduated residency, I became what's known as a hospitalist. Okay. So if people were admitted to the hospital, they didn't have their own doctor to come see them, I would see them in the hospital. So I did that, and that's a 7-on, 7-off schedule. So I worked 7 days a week, and then I had 7 days off. And during my off time, I really got a chance to look at what medicine used to be in the face of what medicine was. So back when medicine first started, your doc would go to your house, right? He would have an hour with you, 2 hours with you, right? And then you would pay him in a pumpkin pie, maybe, But you had his time, you had his attention, you had his curiosity. In the face of fast forward to today, I have 7 minutes with you.
And this tough 7 minutes, let's just, because I had to laugh because I've experienced this as a patient, but is this like a documented time frame, or is this like a range, or like what are we working with here?
So it is a range.
Okay.
Right? And it's based off of my own calculation. So
Got
this
it.
is not
Okay,
scientific.
got it. Okay.
It is a range.
Okay.
But it's a real range because we have to see so many patients in a day, right? And after I see you, guess what I got to do? I have to write your prescription. I have to write your notes. I have to reread your notes. I have to close your notes. I have to bill your notes, right? So there's a lot of administrative tasks that go in it. And I do want to get home to my family, right? So yeah, you have smooth 7 minutes.
Got it.
But for me, in that 7 minutes, you have all of me, right? The last patient is out of my mind. The next patient's not in my mind. It's just you and I, right? Yeah.
I think it's fast. So when you collide medicine and business, you start getting into this place of what you're talking about, which is time management.
Right.
But it's much bigger than that, because you decided to go the urgent care route and the family practice route. Yes.
Yes.
Why both, and which one did you find more challenging?
Good question. So I was actually recently at the International Leaders Summit with Bishop T.D. Jakes and Michael Phillips, and I had a chance to share a conversation. And in sharing, he gave me language for who I am. He said, "Oh, you're a serial entrepreneur," which I had not really pegged myself as that. So thank you, Pastor Phillips, for that. But so I was invited to do the urgent care. Let's start there.
Okay.
So I was invited to join a group, and the intent in joining was to start, grow, scale, and exit from day one.
That was the deal.
That was the deal.
And you signed up for that.
I signed up for that. Correct.
Why did you sign up? Like, what was it intriguing about that for you?
A few things were intriguing. The ability to have control over how we cared for people, right? Because when you're in a hospital system, there's a certain way that you have to do it. When you're under a big umbrella, there's a certain way that you have to do it, right? Granted, as I have come to find out, even within your own system, there are certain systems that make business flow that you do have to abide by, right? So I do understand that. But there was a certain level of care, right? There was a mission, a vision, and purpose that was unique to us that better served patients, right? When people came in, they didn't feel like they were coming into like a sterile white box, right? Like a doctor's office. It was, oh, we're coming to see Dr. Flowers, right? So it was the ability to create that hometown doc feeling and to really give people care from door to door.
Got it.
That really appealed to me.
Got it. And so it was a consort. It was a group.
It was a group. Yeah.
Okay. And they reached out. They sought you for what? What expertise / skill did they have to have from you?
It's a good question.
'Cause that's how it works, right?
Yeah, listen, I'll have to ask them that. What did you see in me?
No, because there's no way. Like you had to evaluate whether you were going to get on board or not.
Right.
So there was a skill set you knew you had. It was the same skill set you knew you had that made you say yes. It's the same skill set they needed when they came after you. What was that skill set?
You know, if I have to give language to it, I'll say two things. One, my desire to really create a compassionate environment for patients,
That's
right?
awesome.
So that customer service, the customer experience, even and especially in medicine, I think that's a lost art that we can have a whole conversation about.
I love listening to you talk
we'll
about
talk
it,
about
but that's
that,
great. Go
right?
ahead.
The second thing, which we talked about a little bit pre-show, right? I do like to maintain my grace as a lady, but there is a fire in me to do certain things, right? And the desire to really figure out this business entrepreneurial space, the how does the world work space, the how does that business solve this problem space has always been intriguing to me, right? So I was like, oh, I get the chance to, yes. Now, I didn't say yes out loud right away, right? I was like, let me think about it. I had my attorney look at it, but internally I was like, yes, I'll do it.
That's great.
So yeah.
Yeah, and so the world just keeps turning and doors just keep opening, you know? And so the family practice was already in place, right?
No, this actually came after The
urgent care was first.
The urgent care was first.
What year was this?
Let's see. This was 2015.
Got it.
Yeah, 14,
Okay.
15.
Yeah.
And then the primary care came 2018.
Got it. And you were already involved in a company that was built to scale to sell.
Correct.
Did you see the primary care the same way?
Initially, I did.
Huh?
Yes, I did. You laugh. Why are
because
you laughing?
because it makes sense that you do.
Yeah.
It makes sense that you would. Most people are programming from where they're at, or from where they're coming from.
Right.
So I asked the question, hoping you'd say yes. You said yes. I laughed. But you it sounds like you wanted to say more. You said initially I did.
I did. So, and I say it that way for a couple of reasons. One, because I really believe that as entrepreneurs, we have to have the vision to build to scale.
Build to
Right.
scale.
Build to scale, and then build to succeed, right? Or build to have succession. Meaning, I'm not building a side hustle that's gonna like fizzle in 3 months, 3 years, right?
Right.
I want something that I can either pass on to the next generation or that I can sell to someone else and make their enterprise bigger. With the primary care, that was my initial vision. But remember, things call to you, right? And so even as I started primary care and as we were exiting the urgent care, I started to get questions from other business owners, from other doctors. How do I start a business, right? Hey, I'm dealing with this in business. Can you help me? And so the teacher in me, right?
The bridge.
Right. So I'm like, how do I bridge this physician to right?
That's great.
And so I said, okay, well, I started answering questions, but I don't really like to do things halfway. And so I said, let me get some education around this. So I started going to business seminars. I started really studying business, started studying specifically how to scale businesses, right? Because we don't just want to just start side hustles, right? We want to build to scale, build for succession. And then I said, you know what? Let me become a coach. Not every coach is created equal. And so I went through and I got my certification as an executive coach. And I'm going through the ICF level 2 path, right? So I'll be like certified to work internationally, which I already do, but under like a certified lens, right? So that I can have a proven framework to share with people, because not all coaches are created equal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. You had 2 successful exits.
Yeah.
What did that do for your mindset? What did that do for, you say, build to scale and build for succession? You succeeded on that vernacular twice. And so that's got to plant a different level of seeds. At least I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
What did that do for your mindset and for the course you are going to chart next?
Got it. So I actually learned the lesson post-exit, right? So we built to scale, but there is no succession, not right now, right? Because we've sold, right? I sold. And so it really came after the sale, as I'm looking at my daughter like, I had this. I no longer have this to give to you, right? Whether or not she wants to work yet, right? So that was an afterthought, and that started my second mountain, right? Or my next mountain. I don't know if it's second, third, whatever it is. But that is what really started the next ascent to what do I now build for succession? Now, that's a very interesting thing, because one of the things I learned about myself in this journey, I'm a great number 2, right? Not the best number 1 yet, right? And so for me right now, my succession and or my next scaling venture, I envision it being within an ecosystem partnership, right? Very much like any organization that acquires another organization, a smaller organization, right?
Yes.
There are powerhouses within both organizations, but they each have their function,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for me, my next chapter looks like being the bridge, right? Connecting this ecosystem to that ecosystem, or myself connecting to different ecosystems, and we can mutually serve the people who we're called to serve. And for me right now, it's the entrepreneur, the executive, the physician, the leader, right? So that's what that looks like.
That's fascinating. You just I could do this all day
do it.
long with you. I've always been enamored with the entrepreneur, the number one, the number two, the number 8, the number 4, whatever. And it takes ridiculous self-awareness to say, I feel like I'm a better number 2.
Right.
When did you get there? How did you get there? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's going there.
Yes,
okay.
ma'am, because people need to know.
Right.
You're crushing it.
Right.
And you're saying, you know what? I'm better with a visionary, with someone that's I'm in the bunker with.
Right.
That I can like point out a lot of the holes and the surroundings and help fill those.
Right.
But everyone wants to be a number 1, Dr. Flowers. Everyone's the number 1. So I would love for you to help us.
Right.
When did you realize this, and how did you realize this?
First of all, this seat just got real hot. Ooh, who turned on the heat? Let's start there. Okay. So we talked about our timeline.
Right.
I started the group circa 2015, 14, 15, somewhere around there. Started the primary care solo venture 2018. Somewhere around 2019, right, after the build out, when the patients start coming, when I start billing, when I start, receiving rejections from the billing, when I start receiving checks that are like 53 cents, it's like, whew, okay, this is a lot harder by yourself than with the group.
Got it.
Right? And so I found myself asking, albeit good questions, right, but questions that I didn't necessarily have to ask in a group setting because the other guys were there, right? We each had our skill set,
right,
and they filled in those gaps where I didn't have, right? And they had a level of experience and they had a level of support that I didn't have.
Got it.
See, we both are en route to the office, but the male partners, they would go in, coffee in hand. They've been fed breakfast. The kids have been sent to school, right? They've had their newspaper. They've had their chill time, their downtime, their meditation time. When I go to the office, I've had to check homework. What are you doing after school? Which activities today? We have to do a whole lot of other things en route to the office, right? And so by the time they get to the office, they're at like 95%. I'm getting in at about 85% because I've expended so much more energy on managing the household, right?
Got it.
And so I made the statement earlier, I'm not necessarily a good number 1 yet. I don't have the bandwidth to be that number 1. Make sense?
Right.
So there's a lot of things that factor into whether or not you're a good number 1 or number 2. It's not just your skill. It's not just your will either. Because I can will myself into a good number 1. That means I will not sleep, right? That means I'm burning the candle at both ends. And that means that the mission, vision, and purpose suffers. I suffer, and everyone around me suffers.
Wow.
So I'll be number 2 and number 3 or number 4 for now. And when circumstances change, right, then I can climb my way back up, right?
I need you to understand this. I really do, because success, I don't know how you said it. You said coaches are on all
Not created equal.
created equal.
No.
And I'm going to say this: success is not all created equal.
No.
And so you just kind of, there's nothing like self-awareness. There's nothing like self-awareness. And having self-awareness, Dr. Flowers, has allowed you to, soar to great heights and help a lot of people. And I think if I were to boil you talking down to like a very potent jus, it's self-awareness. You are devastating communicator, but but the self-awareness that you bring to every topic, you call it a bridge, is unreal. And so that's what I'm pulling right now. When you think about, you know, this next mountain, as you call it, and your ability to take everything you know today and turn it into education and empowerment for the future. How do you view that?
Great question. So I had this conversation this morning with someone, just this morning, and the conversation centered around her next level. And in true coaching, we don't give answers. We ask questions, right? And so the question that I asked her was, okay, now that you're at the top of this mountain, what are you going to do? And so she thought about it for a while. And she said, I'm going to go back down the mountain, I guess. And I said, well, what's the purpose of going back down the mountain, right? And we had our exchange. But the point that I ultimately asked permission to share with her, right, because I want her to understand this is my idea, not hers. We only go back down a mountain, in my view, if we're helping others go up a mountain, right? Otherwise, we go from mountain to mountain to mountain. But in this season, I feel like I'm called to go back and to pull a few people up into the entrepreneurial space. Now, that's hard, right? Because I've had so much success in urgent care and primary care, and now I got to go build out a coaching practice, right? It's like, I got to go back down the mountain again, right? Because the blueprint of success for urgent care is different than the blueprint of success for primary care is different than the blueprint of success for coaching, consulting, et cetera.
Right.
The principles are the same, right? But for urgent care and primary care, I love to tell this way. You're sick. You know you're sick. You come to me. You know I have the answer. For coaching, most people don't realize they need coaching. So they don't even know to look for me, right? Or a coach. It doesn't have to be
Right, sure,
me,
yeah.
right? And they don't necessarily understand that the answer is another question.
Right. It's inside of them.
It's inside of them. And so now I'm dealing with a completely flipped upside down paradigm.
Oof. Jesus.
But I understand.
You getting this, brother?
But we got to go down the mountain and bring a few more people up. So that's kind of where we are, which is interesting, right? Because when you're used to rapid ascension, right? You're used to going up the mountain. It is hard and painful to slow down and to go back. So hard. But you know, what I say, you accept the calling for the season.
Dropping gems.
Tell me.
Like only you do.
Thank you.
That's incredible. You know, you only go down a mountain to bring people back up the mountain. What a chapter of life, right? What a chapter of life that you are entering into. And, you know, you bring such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to the table for anybody. And so it's got to be fun. It might not feel like fun because I see it on your face. It might not feel like fun, but it's going to get really fun because you think you have to learn all this new stuff. I'm over here like laughing. Like, stop. No. Yeah, you're going to be a continuous learner, a lifelong learner, but you have what it takes to help thousands of people right now. And so, but that's what makes you great is the fact that you're, you know, part of the classroom is your oxygen, you know, and the ability to take that knowledge and information to the masses. But you're going back up another mountain, sis. And you're going to take a bunch of people with you. And I think that's a great season, you know, and it defines our podcast, right? speaking life, sowing seeds today for tomorrow's harvest. You have planted many seeds. And when we talk, I just remember vividly talking to you 10 years ago. And I know, right? and like, and where you were at, and what wasn't going the way you wanted it to. Do you care to share that part? Because that was you going up a mountain.
Right.
You're sitting here today, having gone up multiple mountains and back down mountains and back up mountains. Based on seeds you sown, you reaped a harvest.
Right.
And now you have this field, and the field is full of dreams, and it has other people's dreams in it,
Yes.
and you're able to help them realize those dreams. And so when you started and you were getting rolling and you were trying to figure out the practice game, right?
Right.
What were some of the challenges that you dealt with then that honestly have you well where you are right now? Because then they felt impossible. Kind of like you're talking about this coaching thing. You're like, wow, I got to. But does anyone here doubt that Dr. Flowers is going to build a successful whatever the heck she wants? And so can you take us back to that time when you were trying to figure it out and almost nothing was going right?
Right. You know what's interesting? First of all, I just got hot in here because you asking all of the questions, okay? When things don't work, I find that it's because something within me is not working. So you talk about self-awareness. That's language that you're reminding me of. A lot of times, we have not yet become the person that we need to be to do the thing that we need to do, right? And so when I reflect back on our conversations, I can honestly say that I needed to grow in my leadership, in my leadership skills, my leadership abilities, to cause yeses in certain areas and to go from arduous to momentum, right, to success in certain areas. All of it was a result of just improving in my leadership, whatever that was, right? Whether that was, and for me, this is huge, this is my number one, whether that was walking in unconditional love with boundaries. I was great with the unconditional love part. All right, I was okay with it.
Okay.
It's the with boundaries part. It's the saying no part, saying the I can't do this part. Because you don't know that I just work 16 hours a day, but you need another hour of my day. And that's an hour for you, but that's another hour of commute time, right? So the ability to say no was huge for me, right? The ability to also do those pesky, repetitive, skill-building mastery things, right? The things we really don't want to do. But have to do, right? So once I really got a hold of those two key pieces, right, the leadership and the skill building towards mastery, that's when things unlocked. Now, I say it in 30 seconds, but that was a good 3 years. Yeah.
That's amazing. And again, a clinic on like just self-reflection and just finding, you said, once I got a hold. In order to get a hold, you need to search. You need to practice. You need to try. You need to fail. Once I got a hold, right? And so that's fantastic. And you were developing your leadership, and you'll continue to develop your leadership. And, you're at this place right now that is people would dream to be at. The ability to kind of call your own shots, but still impact, still serve, still help, still bring people along for the ride. And when you look at your entire journey, where you are right now, let's call it the halfway point. And you look at your journey, and we just say you're just getting started, whatever we want to call it. And you look at school and education and how serious you took that, but then understanding yourself and trying to connect or bridge worlds, and now, serving and being a vessel of education, but also, a vessel of unconditional love and
With
real
boundaries. With boundaries.
with boundaries. But understanding that this is a crock pot you were creating, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think about the product today, when you think about where you're going, what is it that you're the most excited about? What harvest are you believing for next?
Oof, that's a good one. So I think what I'm believing for next is, you say I'm at the halfway. Who knows where I am, right? But the harvest that I'm most excited for is to see what becomes of my daughter as a result of what I've put in, not just into her directly, but as a result of what she's observed of me, right? So a seed, you plant it, you have a tree. Each tree, there's a branch, right? And then of that tree comes a fruit, and of that fruit comes another seed, right? And the Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so really, I think the evidence of whatever it is that I'm doing and the richness and the goodness of whatever I'm doing, I'll see in her, and more poignantly, I'll see in her kids, right? So just as I hope that my parents, as they observe how she's growing, can say, yeah, we did good, right? Not because of what we've done, right? And the four of us, it's it's an engineer, my sister's an engineer, I'm a doctor, my brother's a lawyer, and the youngest is a philosopher, right? We've done well, but really the testament for them is in her. So I think my evidence will be in her, but really will be in her children.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm building really building for succession, not necessarily just in business, but in character, right? Succession in vision, succession in innovation, right? What is she going to do? What's she going to do with AI, right? How is she going to bridge humanity with, technology? So that's really what I'm looking forward to.
Fascinating.
Maybe a little too far, but that's kind of where I'm looking.
Just far enough. And thank you, Dr. Flowers, for joining us today. I can't thank you enough for, again, your communication style, the way you can just help people see things better, more clearly. I think I got a more profound view of that today than ever. But I'm just stringing together all our conversations, and I'm now saying, there it is. Like, I got it dialed in now. And so thank you again for helping us with that. And thank you for what you've done. Thank you for being a beacon of success. Thank you for being a leader. Thank you for going out there and taking the hits and taking the strikes. It's not easy.
Right.
And so not only have you created a path for young aspiring people in medicine, you've created a path for young aspiring people in business. And so you're doing the thing. I just want you to know right now, you're doing the thing and you're doing it well. And so, we need you. Like, keep doing what you're doing. It's inspiring. I'm watching, and it's exciting to see. So thank you for speaking life. Thank you for sowing seeds. Thank you for this beautiful harvest we're going to continue to see coming from you. Dr. Rhoda Donat Flowers, a friend, a killer. There's a tiger. She said it. There is something inside there. And so I thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for helping us. God bless y'all.